Welcome to our deep dive into the reasons why many international students, those bright-eyed seekers of education and, let's be honest, slightly better pizza, are forced to seek asylum. It's a bit like finding out the charming exchange student who always brought homemade baklava to the potluck is now living in a one-bedroom apartment with 6 roommates and a distinct lack of baklava. It's a complex issue with many layers, so let's, as they say in the world of overly long YouTube dissertations, break it down. We're going to unpack the situations that drive these students to make the incredibly difficult decision to seek asylum, because it's never as simple as the dorms were full. Imagine this. You're a student, ambitious, maybe a little terrified of ending up back on your parents' couch, and you see a brochure. This isn't just any brochure. This is a glossy, high-resolution window into a future shimmering with opportunity. It promises a world-class education, maybe even a job waiting for you when you graduate. It's the academic equivalent of finding a golden ticket, except instead of a chocolate factory, it's a visa to a whole new life. The problem is, many of these promises are about as substantial as a politician's election promises. Once the students arrive, suitcases full of dreams and ramen packets, they discover the reality is far less glamorous. The job market is tougher than they were led to believe. The visa regulations are a labyrinthine nightmare, and that post-graduation pathway to residency? Let's just say it's less of a pathway and more of a tightrope walk over a chasm of bureaucratic despair. These misleading recruitment practices are often the first domino to fall. Students are lured in by institutions more concerned with filling seats and collecting tuition checks than with providing actual support. It's a bait and switch on a global scale, and the fallout can be devastating. Let's talk about visas, shall we? Those magical pieces of paper that hold the key to a student's future. They're also about as reliable as a weather forecast in a hurricane season. Governments around the world, in their infinite wisdom, have a habit of changing visa regulations with the same frequency that some people change their socks. One minute, you're on track for a post-graduation work permit. The next, you're facing deportation faster than you can say, "But I haven't finished my thesis." These sudden policy shifts can turn a student's life upside down. They might be forced to abandon their studies, leave the country they've come to call home, or face the very real possibility of being sent back to a country where their future is uncertain at best. Imagine having your entire life packed into a suitcase shipped across continents only to be told, "Sorry, we've changed our minds, you can't unpack that here." It's enough to make anyone want to seek asylum in a country with slightly more consistent stationery supplies. Chapter 3. The Debt Trap. Exploitation and Financial Hardships. Let's be honest, studying abroad isn't cheap. It's a significant financial investment, often requiring students to take on massive debt. Many rely on the promise of being able to work part-time to support themselves, offsetting the exorbitant tuition fees and living costs. However, the reality for many international students is a harsh wake-up call. They find themselves trapped in a system that limits their work hours, pays them less than their local counterparts, or worse, exploits their vulnerability. Imagine working tirelessly, juggling studies with multiple jobs, only to find yourself barely scraping by, the mountain of debt looming larger with each passing day. It's a pressure cooker of financial strain, and for some, seeking asylum becomes a desperate act of self-preservation. Chapter 4. No Way Back. Political and social instability back home. For some students, the decision to seek asylum isn't driven by broken promises or financial hardship. It's a matter of survival. They come from countries where war, persecution, or political turmoil are the norm, not the exception. Returning home isn't just inconvenient, it's potentially life-threatening. Imagine living with the constant fear that speaking out against your government, practicing your religion, or simply loving who you choose could have dire consequences. Now imagine having to make the impossible choice between returning to that reality or seeking safety in a foreign land, leaving behind everything and everyone you know. It's a decision no one should have to make. Yet, for many international students, it's a heartbreaking reality. Chapter 5. A question of safety, discrimination, and unsafe conditions. Let's address the elephant in the room. or rather, the xenophobia in the lecture hall. Sadly, some international students face discrimination, threats, and unsafe conditions in their host countries. It's a bitter irony that those who come seeking education and a brighter future are sometimes met with hostility and prejudice. Imagine being treated like an outsider in the very place you're trying to build a life. Imagine the fear of walking down the street, wondering if you'll be targeted because of your ethnicity, religion, or simply because you speak with an accent. For some students, the dream of studying abroad becomes a nightmare of isolation, fear, and violence. Seeking asylum becomes less of a choice and more of a necessity, a desperate attempt to escape a hostile environment. Outro: a shared responsibility, understanding the plight of international students. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more content on important global issues. The plight of international students seeking asylum is a complex issue with no easy answers. It's a shared responsibility to understand the factors driving these students to make such difficult choices. By shedding light on their stories, we can work towards creating a world where education is a pathway to opportunity, not a dead end of broken promises and shattered dreams. It's time to bridge the gap between perception and reality, to see these students not as statistics or burdens, but as individuals with hopes, dreams, and the right to a safe and secure future.